2008 World Champions of Baseball.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
Now entering the game for Philly Pressbox Radio, Bill Furman and Jim Chet Chesko.
It's Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. Welcome to the Philly Pressbox Radio Roundtable, brought to you by the Irish Rover Station House in Langhorne, PA, Cavs, Philly Tailgates, and the STT Sports Network. I'm Bill Furman. I'll be your host tonight, along with my partner, Jim Chet Chesko. And hey, Chet, I got jump in my step, pal. The Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. What a whipping of the Washington Commanders. The Flyers bounced back from a tough weekend in New York with a win the other night against the Devils. They're back at it again tonight. The Sixers, a big win last night, too, beating LeBron James and the Lakers at home. Big night for Tyrese Maxey. And Chet, it's true. Pitchers and catchers report in 12 days for spring training. First game in 24 days. We are loaded up with plenty to talk about in Philly sports.
As always, Bill, the Flyers are still 3 or 4 points out of a wild card spot. Those back-to-back losses last Friday and Saturday hurt. The Sixers have suddenly won 3 in a row, and there's speculation the big guy will be back on the court this weekend, Bill. Hang on. It's possible. And, the Eagles are headed to the Super Bowl. That's, I guess, a pretty big story, too. We may not have time, Bill, to preview this Sunday's Grammy Awards. I know you were hoping for that, and we got too much to talk about.
Well, we loaded the agenda up just so we would not have time to talk about that, because Philadelphia sports has given us plenty to talk about, and the fact that the Eagles are playing the way they're playing, man, you can't talk about them enough or think about what's going on quite enough.
The Grammy Awards are the music ones, by the way, just so we're clear.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm not shocked. All right, so you want to talk a little Eagles before we get to
let's tell everybody what kind of guests we're going to have first, then we'll jump in. We'll jump to the Eagles. We got 2 great guests, actually. One is making her first visit to Philly Pressbox Radio in NBC Sports, Amy Fadool. I'm excited about that. And Paul Domowitch from the 33rd team will help us deep dive into the Eagles.
Bill, you won't believe this, but I swear this is true. One of my goals and resolutions for 2025 was to somehow get Amy Fadool on our show this year. I'm not kidding, and it's happening.
Well, you've been around her a few times, right? You've talked to her a few times, just weren't able to get the schedules together and make it happen.
It's actually only the 3rd time I've talked to her in history. The first time we weren't doing our show yet. It was way back in 2013. The second time I met her at the Philly Sports Banquet in 2019, and I was going to ask her, and then we ended up getting interrupted or whatever, and I never got to talk to her again that night. And so I said, next time I talk to her, I'm asking her on the show. So she was at the Sports Writers Banquet again this year. We talked, had a nice chat. She was there to help honor Michael Barkan, her co-worker. And she said she'd been delighted, very happy to come on our show. So it's happening.
That's awesome. Looking forward to that. Hey, Chet, we're going to take that deep dive with Damo a little bit later on the Eagles, but let's get your take, my take on the game. I'll kind of lead you along and see what you think. But let's start out with the fact that QB1 played pretty darn good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was very, very good. Probably second best game of the year behind the Pittsburgh game. The most enjoyable Eagles game for me since maybe the final 2 games of the Super Bowl 52 run 7 years ago. Yeah, the quarterback played very well. The rushing attack, great again, as it's been all season. That first carry and touchdown run by Saquon was insanely fun to watch. They forced 4 turnovers, Bill, 3 by the defense, 1 by special teams, 8 touchdowns offensively. Come on, man. They did almost nothing wrong and gave fans nothing to complain about this week, Bill.
Well, that's right. And I tell you, Chad, I thought watching the game, I thought, the 18-play drive by Washington right out of the chute and holding them to a field goal.
That was huge.
And then 18 clock seconds later, the Eagles are ahead. Washington gets the ball and fumbles. Eagles go in again, it's 14-3. Then Washington can only get a field goal again, it's 14-6. That game was over. I mean, it looked like it was close. They were beaten.
It was still within striking distance at halftime, and I figured, the start of the second half would be key. The Eagles had the ball. I don't think they did anything with the first possession, but after that, it was all Eagles. The Commanders could do no right, and it was blowout city.
Yeah, a lot of adjustments by the Eagles, I think, on the defensive side. And, nice game by Zach Ertz for Washington.
11 catches, yeah.
11 catches, 108 yards, 110 yards, whatever it was. That. I'll give that to Travis Kelce all day long as they're 10-yard gains. Keep them out of that 25, 20 catch and run stuff. I'll give them tight ends the yards as long as they don't get hurt anywhere else.
And how about the play of the linebackers yet again? I mean, I know the tight ends, maybe are going into linebacker territory a lot, but still, Oren Burks and this guy, Zach Bond, just had great games both. There's Burke. We never showed Oren Burks all season, Bill. There he is.
Because you didn't know who he was, pal. You didn't know who he was.
I remember. I said, wait, who? I've heard the name, but who? Yeah, he's on the Eagles.
Right.
Now we know.
And he's played really well. And same with I meant to double check this because I checked it in one spot where I always get the stats from and look at the stats.
Look, Dennis Malloy giving you props. Denny Malloy giving you props, Bill.
Yeah, how about that? I mean, I'll get back to that. I did.
All right.
Yeah. Jalen Carter on the stat sheet that I looked at was not on the stat sheet. No tackles, no assists, and played one heck of a football game doing what he does, and he was not on the stat sheet, at least the one that I looked at.
Yeah, but he did have a lot of pressures from what I understand.
Yeah.
He's always pressuring somebody. So he's had a great season and a great postseason. Jalen Carter is the real deal. He's going to be fun to watch over the next 5-7 years.
Yeah, and so let's jump back over. Let's talk about that run by Saquon Barkley and the total game by Saquon Barkley and that offensive line. Spectacular again.
Yeah, absolutely. And Saquon is just so much fun to watch. As I said, that first run looked like he was going to be tackled 2 or 3 times right away. He spins right out of it, goes 60 yards like it's no big deal. So he is just so much fun to watch. He's not going to – don't get your hopes up, folks. He's not going to run for 2,000 yards again next year. I'm telling you that right now.
Well,
it's
don't
not
be speaking when you're not supposed to be speaking.
But he was what a year he's had, and a couple of great runs again in this particular game. Then his backup, Kenny Gainwell, gets banged up a little bit in concussion protocol. Will Shipley comes in. Looks like he can be, a real good player down the road.
Yeah, well, they all look good behind that offensive line for sure. And the credit, Landis Dickerson played banged up, and he played really good. He got replaced. And they play really good. Tyler Steen started, didn't hear his name except for one blown assignment they had in there. Tyler Steen played really well. It's next man up for Coach Stoutland.
Yeah, and they just keep doing a great job. Yeah, you mentioned the 2 centers, both of them nowhere near 100%, but they both gutted it out for as long as they possibly could. And, they activated Juergens as just kind of an emergency thing in case he was needed. He was needed. He went in there, and he was effective. The only time I felt really bad for, I think it was him in there at the time, was when Washington had that goal line situation. They kept jumping, and like 5 times in a row, the Eagles headed to the tush push. I'm thinking, just hand the ball off, guys. Come on. These guys are taking a beating.
Right. Hey, before we get to our next thing, and then we'll come back to the Eagles with Domo, yep. I have a name this Eagle for you.
Uh-oh.
Okay? See how you do. You didn't do very good with Orange Burke a couple
weeks ago. No.
Here you go. Played quarterback and outside linebacker in high school. Threw for 3,161 yards. Ran for 3,923 yards while recording 94 touchdowns, 67 rushing, 27 passing. Selected first team All-State quarterback, rated as the number 2 outside linebacker and the number 4 athlete in his state.
He's on the Eagles?
He is on the Eagles, and he's not Jalen Hurts. It's not that easy.
How about that? Will Shipley.
Not Will Shipley. You want to take one more guess so we don't delay this too long?
One of the defensive front guys. Ajomo. No, he wouldn't be any quarterback at all.
How about Zach Bond?
Zach Bond played quarterback.
Bond was a quarterback who ran for almost 4,000 yards and threw for 3,000 yards.
You know, I do remember hearing now that he was a quarterback, but I didn't know he was that good of a quarterback. Wow.
First team All-State in the state of Wisconsin.
How about that?
Yeah. I thought that was a good little tidbit I saw. I thought, you know what? He's never going to know who that is. I would have never guessed who that was. And I thought, what the heck? We'll throw it out there. All right. Hey, you had a chance to visit with CNN Phillies Amy Fadool just this afternoon. Talk Sixers after a big win last night over LeBron James and the Lakers. Big night for Tyrese Maxey. And we're going to talk some Eagles too. Is Amy as fired up like the rest of us are?
You know, it's not CSN Philly anymore, Bill. It's NBC Sports Philadelphia.
Oh, I typed it wrong.
Come on, you're living in the past.
I am, believe me.
Bill, you've watched Amy on TV. You know that she's good, in good spirits all the time, but especially with the Sixers on a 3-game win streak, and of course the Eagles heading back to the Super Bowl. You can tell she loves her job on NBC Sports Philly, and that she's a massive Maxey fan as well. We get to all of that in our chat, which was taped just a few hours ago, and here is that chat right now. Great week on the Philly sports scene to have this first-time visitor to Philly Pressbox Radio. You know this Emmy Award winner from NBC Sports Philadelphia, especially Sixers pre- and post-game live, Birds Huddle on occasion. Let's say hello to Amy Fadool. Welcome, Amy.
So glad to be here, Chet. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Amy, we're going to talk lots of Eagles and Sixers with you in just a bit, but you grew up in Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. I think everybody who watches you on TV knows that you're a University of Kentucky alum. That comes up on occasion. How about that? How'd you end up in Philadelphia, though, in late 2008, early 2009? And has it really been 16 years already?
It's remarkable. Sometimes I feel like it's been 16 minutes, and other times I feel like, was I anywhere else? Have I only worked here? I love it here. I can't imagine working anywhere else. But no, I mean, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, as you said, and I went to school knowing what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in sports broadcasting in some way, shape, or form. And so for me, my mom's originally from Kentucky, but she had lived there in a number of years, but she's a really big sports fan. And I grew up a very big sports fan, obviously, as well. And really the SEC for me growing up was always, that's what we watched. SEC football, SEC basketball, obviously with her Kentucky roots. So I only looked at schools where, you know, sports were such a big part of the university experience, and like Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama and Kentucky. So I went and visited and I fell in love with Kentucky. And then from there, I just worked my way up, and I had gotten to the point I was actually working in Baltimore, which is not too far from where most of my family lives. Most of them are in the DC area now. And it was a great situation. I was close to, you know, where I grew up. I had a lot of family that was within an hour's drive, but I was just looking for one more move. And I was working in local television, you know, like Channel 10 here, Channel 6, Channel 3. And even though I had a great shop, I loved my shop in Baltimore, and they would give us, you know, ample amount of time. I really wanted to go to a sports only place. And my agent at the time had told me about these, you know, regional sports networks, and the king of them all was Comcast Sportsnet Philadelphia. This is where it started, obviously back with Spectrum. Way back in the day, Prism, which was we started in 97, so Prism was before that. Yes. So it had been a minute. So I looked at I interviewed actually New England Sports Network, Nesson. I interviewed here, and I just fell in love with Philadelphia. I'd never been here aside from the airport, and it's just such a great sports town. And when I came up here, you know, the World Series had just happened in 2008, and the city was electric. And it felt home. And that's when I knew that it was an easy decision for me. And that was, I moved here very late December of 2008. Mm-hmm. My first day was January 5th, 2009. And I've never looked back.
Well, all right, let's talk Philly sports. How good did the Eagles look in beating the Commanders Sunday in the NFC Championship game? And how are you feeling about a rematch with Andy Reid's Chiefs in Super Bowl 59?
Yeah, I thought the Eagles would win over the Commanders. The Commanders they were outclassed. There's nothing wrong with their season. They had a good season. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Jaden Daniels is the real deal, and they had some really nice wins. And I just think everybody thought down there in DC, like, oh, we're probably a year away from getting something going. And so that was a surprise. So good for them. Getting those road wins it's huge for a team that's trying to learn how to win and erase all the bad culture that they had there in DC. But the Eagles just outclassed them. They're a superior team. So I had no doubt. I didn't think they would score 55 points. It's the highest point total for a winning team in the NFC Championship game. That's remarkable. I was very impressed. And the one thing that I really liked about that Eagles win among, all of the touchdowns was that the passing game did not take a back seat. We heard Jalen Hurts joke after the game that he was finally let out of his straitjacket. Obviously, he was having fun and feeling good, but that had been a lot of the talk surrounding Jalen Hurts and the passing game as a whole. And Kellen Moore, are they going to open up the playbook, or is A.J. Brown going to get involved? And they answered those questions. And I think if you're going to beat the Chiefs, you're going to have to do the same thing. Not the exact same, kind of playbook necessarily, but a lot of just matriculating the ball down the field. And that could be a lot of the Dallas Goedert usage, Devontae Smith, on some of these little kind of like out routes and things that working on the sideline, and then you maybe work over the middle. You're going to have to throw the ball against the Chiefs. You can run the ball against them. Okay. You can't run as well as you can against the Commanders. Commanders run defense obviously was not very good. It was pretty poor, but I feel good. I don't know if I feel as confident as I did going into the Commanders game, because I felt really sure they were going to win, but I feel good. I feel really good. The only question mark, obviously, and it's a big one, is Patrick Mahomes, because I don't care if he could have the poorest numbers of his entire career, but when the lights are the brightest, that guy shows up to play, and that's always tough. Statistically, he is one of the best quarterbacks we've seen probably in the last 6 years. They're going to their 5th Super Bowl in 6 years, which is remarkable. They're on an absolute tear. But I like the Eagles' chances, and I don't know that I thought that. Certainly 2 years ago, I thought maybe they'll give them a game.
Yeah.
But I think that the Eagles are going to give them as good a game as probable. And I think the Eagles are going to win.
All right. Hey, by the way, nice seeing you on Birds Huddle once in a while, or as it's called temporarily, Mission 59.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah,
Birds
Huddle still exists,
a good watch.
But these are specials that we have that are just Super Bowl specials. So we're obviously kind of ramping them up now, and they'll go in full force, especially next week when John Clark will fly down on Saturday. And then all next week we'll have, they have all the media night stuff. And so we'll have all kinds of stuff, and that'll be on the Mission 59 shows, which are in addition to Birds Huddle. You can't get enough Eagles right now, Chet.
I know, but we're going to talk Sixers right now. We're going to switch gears and talk a little Sixers. This certainly hasn't been the season that anyone was expecting or hoping for. Now, when you and I exchanged texts last week and set up this interview for today, I was hoping that by showtime here on January 29th, the Sixers would be on a little winning streak and Joel Embiid would be back in the lineup. Well, after that 7-game skid, they have won 3 in a row, a very impressive win over the Lakers Tuesday night. And it sounds like Embiid may be coming back very soon. We're going to hear about that, the ramping up talk once again. What you make of Tuesday night's win, though, with Tyrese Maxey going off against the Lakers?
Yeah, I mean, I knew Tyrese was going to have a good game just because the Lakers were really shorthanded on guards. So shorthanded that they had to fly in Bronny James Jr., who does not travel. He's usually in the G League, because they were really shorthanded. Gabe Vincent, they had a lot of losses as far as injuries with their guards. So I thought this would be a really good game for Tyrese. Tyrese was looking forward to his matchup with LeBron James. He knows LeBron. They've trained together a couple times in the offseason out in California. So, talk about people that rise to the occasion. Every time that there is something asked of Tyrese Maxey on a big stage, he has delivered. And the Lakers game, I was there. I watched it in person. It was awesome. And there was a fair amount of Lakers fans in there. Not as many as the Knicks fans were a couple weeks ago, but there was a lot. And for Tyrese Maxey to really give all the Sixers fans in attendance a real boost was impressive. And I knew that he could do it. I knew that he was going to be able to. 43, though. I mean, it's his 11th straight game of at least 28 points. That's nothing to sniff at. He is the picture of consistency. And it's interesting because at the start of the season, when he was tasked with doing so much, with no Paul George to start the season, obviously no Joel Embiid, his shooting numbers were really down percentage-wise. And they're still climbing back up there because he kind of put himself in a hole, and you wondered if it was too much for him. And then last night against the Lakers proves it. They had no Paul George. They had no Joel Embiid. And they handled the Lakers easily. That was not a game after halftime in the least bit. And he showed that he should be an all-star.
As for Embiid, he did have a good workout, apparently, even wore his uniform for the workout. Sounds like he will be getting some action, I'm thinking, by this weekend. But the question is, will we ever see Joel Embiid healthy again and playing like an all-star, for an extended period of time? Or is that ship maybe sailed already?
Yeah, I think the caveat there is extended period of time, because if you remember, Joel's now missed 10 straight. Before that, he played 5 games. In the 5 games that he played, he averaged over 30 points in about 30 minutes of work. And that just goes to show you the true talent of him, and maybe why it's so frustrating, because even at his 70% or whatever he was when he was playing, when he was injured, whether it was the foot or the knee, he's still rolling out of bed and dropping 30 plus points in 30 minutes of work. It's mind-boggling, and that's why it has been so many frustrations, because he's an all-star when he walks on the court. He can drop 30 points. He can drop 40 at any given moment. He is just that gifted. He is just that impressive. But the problem is consistency. Tyrese Maxey is the picture of consistency. I just mentioned the 11 straight games. Joel Embiid doesn't play in 11 straight games. He's only played in about a dozen games this year, and I know he's missed now his 400th game of his entire career, as they were pointing out the last night. And part of me, being just a basketball fan, I'm like, if you just give me 55 games of Joel Embiid, I'll take it, because they're going to win 75% of those games, and that getting 35 wins out of 55, and then if the rest of your team can cobble together 12. Look at that. You're close to 50 wins. That's the most, frustrating part that it's been. It's just been able to not only get on the court, but to stay on the court. And he hasn't been able to do that. And I don't know, this day, part of his career, if that's ever going to happen, if it's just going to be an injury kind of hampered type of season each season with him. But the flashes you get are just so promising. It's hard. It's hard to think about.
Hey, getting back to Tyrese Maxey, I'm guessing that you and he have bonded at some point regarding your University of Kentucky connection?
Yes. The very first time I interviewed him, I showed him I have an old school, like really old school Kentucky jacket. It's like satin. It's from the 70s or 80s. And he was like, I got to get that. I was like, well, it's not your size, buddy. But if I find one that's your size, I'll get it for you. But yeah, he has a really fond memories of Kentucky. He was there. Obviously, it was the COVID shortened year. And it always goes back to a couple things that I know about him. While he was there, he started something called the Breakfast Club. He was him and Emmanuel Quickly to start, and there was other guys that got in there, Ashton Higgins and some other guys, Nick Richards, that were there. But actually, I think Nick Richards might have been already gone. But a couple guys, he and Emmanuel Quickly started it, and they would get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, even after games, and go and work out. And that's dedication that Maxey's carried on. He still does that to this day. He still is working out. He still is always, ball is life mentality with him. I always go back to that, and I always go back to when the spotlight was the brightest, in the biggest games, even in college. That's when he had his best moments. And that's why I know that he's just going to be such a gem for the Sixers team. For a team that's hoping to be continuously in the playoffs, he's a guy that you're going to need, because we saw that last year at Madison Square Garden. He's always going to step to the spotlight. I
remember that you advocated drafting, him.
I did. I picked him in our 21st overall. There's a little sneaky story about that, Chet. I left that draft prospect, my mock draft, to the very end. I had done a couple of draft prospects. I had done a couple of mock drafts, and they said, all right, we need your final pick. And I was like, gosh, I've done a lot of these, and I don't know. And I was like, who I know the most about, who I watched every single game of his young college career? Tyrese Maxey. There's my pick. But on paper, he fit the Sixers mold, what they needed. They needed a combo guard. They needed a guy. The knock on him in college was that he wasn't a good three-point shooter. And I knew the reason behind that was that that's not what his role was in that offense. I watched every single game. So the role was really, for the three-point shooter, was Emmanuel Quickly or Ashton Higgins. And Tyrese Maxey was a true combo guard. And I just thought, well, if the Sixers needed that, which they did after the whole Ben Simmons thing, here's your guy. And it worked out pretty well.
Amy, you do a great job on Sixers pre- and post-game live. I'm guessing you've learned a few things from Mark and Jimmy.
There is times, Chet, when Coach is talking, and I'll look over and Jim has made his point, and I find myself still staring at him just because I'm so enraptured by what he says. Those guys, Jim Lynam has forgotten more basketball than anyone I know could ever think about knowing. And Mark obviously brings so much experience. Mark is true, and Mark, they're both, I get to hang out with them. We hang out outside of work too. We're all golfers. And we certainly have played golf together. But Mark is truly one of the great humans, not only just a great basketball mind, a great father to his boys. We get to experience a lot of that with him. And his experience, both as an overseas player, as an NBA player, is really invaluable in this day and age, the way the NBA is constructed with so many European players. And Mark, I find myself learning so much just about the different aspects of the game from him, but also just life lessons from both of them. They're both just tremendous humans, and I'm very fortunate to not only call them coworkers, but friends.
All right, we have 2 minutes left. One thing I want to ask you about, I remember reading a Philadelphia magazine story last fall that noted you've developed a real friendship, a bond with the other women we frequently see on NBC Sports Philly, Taryn Hatcher, Kate Scott, Ashlyn Sullivan. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. You know, in that article, I remember I was asked a couple different questions, and it's always such a competitive business, just this business in general, certainly among women, because sometimes there's only one or two women, you know, per shop, per television station, per network. And so it was always my kind of goal, wherever I was, whether it was in Baltimore or Nashville or Kentucky, just to try to be as friendly as possible, whether it was to, you know, a young reporter who was female or a young reporter that was male, anybody, just to try to be welcoming, because it is such a cutthroat business. There are very select opportunities out there. And I just always wanted to make sure that I was a welcoming presence, and there wasn't, you know, any kind of, the competition was just natural. We're hard enough on ourselves. You don't need an outside person trying to tear you down. So I always wanted to be seen as a person that they could look to with advice, as friendly as I could be. And so, I think I joked in that article that I try to force my friendship on people, but I certainly want to be seen as a person that they can come to, because it's a hard job. Obviously, you know, we work long hours and nights and weekends and holidays, and it's nice to have someone that you can relate to, male or female. And obviously with the female perspective, it makes it a little bit more unique as well.
Absolutely. Follow Amy Fadool on X and Instagram at Amy Fadool NBCS, and watch her on NBC Sports Philadelphia, of course. Amy, as expected, this was a blast. Thanks so much for joining me here on Philly Pressbox Radio.
Chad, excellent work. Amy's all over it. Good, great interview, and she knows her stuff.
Yeah, she really does. Hard to believe it's been 16 years since she arrived in
I remember when she got there. Yeah. It just
absolutely.
seemed, like she said, time's flying by for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Hey, Chet, did you notice in the comments section, all the Kansas City trolls are out?
Yeah, we got some trolls, Bill. You want to give them a thrill? Post one in the comments.
Yeah, there you go. How about this one? Easy 3P, no competition. Wonder if these trolls are going to be out in 2 weeks with their Chief tail between their legs. Let's go, Chiefs. Killer machine coming through. Well, they're everywhere. We got a whole pile of them in here. But hey, on with that. We'll see you guys next Sunday in the Super Bowl, pal.
Tell everybody about our network, Bill.
Well, let's do it. Philly Pressbox Radio is now part of the STT Sports Network, as in Set the Trends. It's a network set up by our pal Phil Stiefel, host of the terrific Trending in the AM show that you can find every weekday morning on the STT Sports Network YouTube channel. Phil does a great job. Check him out. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Phil's show is on there, and so is ours. Yep. Philly Pressbox Radio can be found on there as well as on our own YouTube channel and our Facebook page. Again, it's the STT Sports Network, setting the trend for what sports talk should be.
And Bill, again, a big thank you to our terrific viewers, the long-timers and the newbies, because we last week went over the 500 subscriber milestone. We truly appreciate it. Heck, let's get to 600 or beyond this year. Why not?
Let's do it. We don't promote ourselves enough. Hey, Chet, tell us what's going on over at the Irish Rover Station House.
This place, yeah, the Irish Rover Station House, a place for good times, always on the menu at the Irish Rover in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. You know the drill. 24 beers on tap served up by the Rover's terrific bartenders. Thursday through Sunday, dinner specials. Thursdays also mean killer burgers, and after 7 p.m., Stella and Wings specials. Oh, speaking of wings, they got them for you for the big game in a week and a half. It is time now to put in your orders for your game day wings, and the Rover's wings are terrific. I've had them many, many times. Really, really good. The Irish Rover Station House is located on Bellevue Avenue in Langhorne and on the web at irishroverstationhouse.com. And Bill, I got to tell you, I was at another establishment over the weekend where a Grateful Dead tribute band was playing, and they started off their opening set with, well, not a Grateful Dead song, but with this, if I can find it. This one. Hey, not the Pep band.
What a way to lead into our next guest to talk NFC champion Eagles from the 33rd team, Paul Domowitch. Domo, welcome back. Hey, and the good thing, Chet, is that band knows how to spell Eagles.
Yeah, exactly.
Domo, welcome back, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.
Hey, Domo, always good to see you. Before we look ahead to the Super Bowl, let's reflect a little bit more on what happened this past Sunday, the 55-23 rout of the Commanders. Would you agree with me that, along with the Pittsburgh game, it was Jalen Hurts' best game of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think it was Kellen Moore's best game of his career as far as a play caller. I mean, they getting the ball out quick, keeping Washington on their heels. But Jalen did a terrific job. I know he's taken some criticism for the fact that he's taken a lot of sacks this year, and deserves criticism for that. But it's about the only flaw you can see in his game. I mean, he doesn't turn the ball over at all anymore. He's got one interception in the last 14 starts. And he's been he's the highest completions percentage of his career. He's doing everything right, and add the running to that too, because he, even on a bad knee last week, was terrific running with the ball.
Damo, it seems that even at 14-3 in the regular season, people still weren't feeling all that great about Nick Sirianni. If he doesn't win bunch of playoff games, he's got to go and this and that. Nick Sirianni's done a heck of a job with his football team.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there never was a concern that he was going to get fired, and there's no concern now. Certainly, I mean, the question is, how quickly does he get a contract extension?
Yeah. Hey, we mentioned Kellen Moore already. There's talk that Kellen Moore might be leaving. He's one of the top contenders for that job down in New Orleans, ironically. Yeah. Have you heard anything new today? Is Kellen Moore maybe heading south?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything today. He had the second interview with them. It's only a matter of time. If it's not, if he doesn't get that job, next year he's going to be at the top of lists. The only guy that's safe is Fangio. I mean, Vic doesn't want to go anywhere. He's happy here. His hometown at Dunmore, PA is right up the Northeast extension. So he's happy to finish his career here, and they're lucky to have him.
How about Jeff Stoutland and the offensive line again? We talked about this a little bit earlier before you were with us. They have to plug and play with Juergens out. They moved Dickerson over. Steen looks like he played really well, other than maybe one blown communication they had there. They end up subbing around, and they just all play well.
Yeah, Stoutland, I'm convinced they could plug in anybody at this point, and they're going to be ready to play because of the way he prepares them. I mean, he knows that everybody's an injury away from them having to go to next man up. Steen's been a great versatile guy to move, to use. I think Dickerson's going to try to play, from what I understand. I don't know how that knee is. I mean, you watched him on the sideline on Sunday. Man, he looked like he was in major pain. Cam Jurgens is still nursing a back injury. So, but they've got 2 weeks to rehab and get treated. So at least at kickoff, both of them will be in the starting lineup as far as I can see.
Going over to the other side of the ball again, Vic Fangio's defense. Man, what a turnaround this year from down near the bottom last year to number 1 in the league this year. You had Zach Bond coming out of nowhere, New Orleans, actually. Nolan Smith, who was maybe looking like a bust as a rookie, and now he's doing great in the postseason. You have the rookie cornerbacks, Oren Burks filling in. They could do no wrong defensively lately.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with Fangio, obviously. He's probably, next to Jimmy Johnson, I have not been around a better defensive coach in my career. I mean, how he's brought in a lot of guys through the draft and free agency that have helped make this turnaround, but Vic's made it work. I mean, these guys, when you look at last year, all the communications breakdowns they would have and the blown coverages. I mean, this unit just seems to play as one. I mean, there's no matter who they, plug in. Nakobe Dean gets hurt and they put in Burks, like you mentioned. Burks is Nakobe Dean, but he's doing a good job. He's doing a solid job. And they just, those two corners are just phenomenal. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell is just terrific. I mean, he's a defensive rookie of the year candidate. And Cooper DeJean should be. I mean, the job he's done at slot corner has just been amazing. And, you saw it last week. I mean, he busts through screens and breaks them up. He does everything right. He may be in my mind one of the top 2 or 3 slot corners in the league right now.
Yeah, and how about the front? Let's talk about them as well. Jalen Carter playing just lights out. I was telling Chet, I needed to double check this because I couldn't believe it. But the place I always look for my stats had Jalen Carter not on the stat sheet. No tackles, no assists, but he played a heck of a football game.
Oh yeah, I mean he's constantly double teamed. I co-host a radio show on WBCB on Monday nights with Paul Jolovitz, and we had a couple of weeks ago we had Dick Vermeil on. Dick Vermeil compared Jalen to Reggie White. I'm not saying he wasn't saying he's as good as Reggie was yet, but that he's that kind of disruptive force on a defensive line, and you see it every week. I mean, if he's not making the play, he's allowing it to happen because of the attention they've got to give him. Last week against Washington, Jordan Davis probably stepped up and had his best game of his career. That big sack on Daniels when Daniels tried to spin away from him, and he just grabs him with his paw and kind of says, "Yeah, you're not going anywhere."
Yeah.
So
speaking of Carter, I mean, excuse me a minute. Did you see where Aaron Donald said it's time to pass the torch from Aaron Donald to Jalen Carter? That's high praise as well.
It sure is. I mean, he's just, my concern when they drafted him, Bill, was maturity. I mean, I had no questions about his talent. No scout did. I mean, he dropped to, I think they got him at 9. They moved up a couple spots to pick him at 9, but that was after, the car accident and some of the other things that happened during his college career. What I've seen this year from him, just personality wise, seems to, he seems to be maturing, and that's the key for him. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that's going to stop him from being one of the best defensive tackles in this league, if not the best, as long as he doesn't cause himself to have problems.
Let me ask you about Nolan Smith, who I mentioned previously. As I said, he looked kind of ho-hum his rookie year. This year, he's been terrific. Is that the effect of Vic Fangio? Is it just maturing on his part, or what?
Vic's probably had a lot to do with it, but I think also it's just him having a year in the NFL. I think he only played 150 snaps on defense as a rookie. This year he's just taken off. I don't know if he's gained any weight, but he's just been he's stronger, faster. He's just amazing. I mean, the way he chased down Daniels on that one sack. think he's got like, I want to say 8 sacks in the last 7 games, something like that,
Yeah.
going back to the regular season. I mean, and they've needed it. When Brandon Graham went down, you know, they don't have a lot of depth at on the edge. They're deeper inside than they are on the outside. And, you know, he stepped up in a big way. And so did the rookie from Houston Christian, Jalix Hunt. I mean, who expected that?
Yeah.
And now he's a guy that's, you know, in a regular rotation.
Well, we've talked about most guys. Let's get to the big one, number 26. You've watched a lot of running backs in your time, 1,000 over your years. Have you ever seen a season quite like what this guy's put together?
No, I haven't, Bill. You know, admittedly, when they signed him, I'm thinking, okay, what's the purpose here? You know, you're overpaying a 27-year-old guy with an injury history. I mean, this is a big gamble, and you know, Howie over the last 6-7 years had not been a guy. You know, they never paid any rookie they drafted, like Miles Sanders. They didn't give him a second contract. They always felt, I mean, it was kind of the tendency around the whole league over the last 5 years has been not so much that they've devalued running back, but that you can always find one. You know, like Kansas City did a few years back with Isaiah Pacheco, when they got him in the 7th round, and he helped beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. So, you know, I wondered about the wisdom of paying Saquon all that money, and then I watched him play, and you know, then I worried, okay, you're overusing him. He's going to be toast by the playoffs, and we get to the playoffs, and he ain't toast. He might break John Riggins's playoff rushing record with a big game against Kansas City. So he's just been phenomenal. I mean, and you know, you put him behind that line. I mean, that should be illegal. The holes there, you know, they're opening for him. It's fun to watch.
Well, we got Super Bowl 59 coming up in a week and a half, of course, a rematch from 2 years ago. How is this matchup different from 2 years ago? You know, what has changed most notably from Super Bowl 57?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Kansas City this year, and no one was terribly impressed by them, even though they only lost, 2 games? One game? I forget. You know, they won 16 games by 1 score. I mean, they never blew anybody out. You look at their roster. You know, I mean, I think the Eagles are more talented than them right now. But they've got Patrick Mahomes, and the Eagles don't. They've got Jalen, and he's a terrific quarterback. But Mahomes seems to be, you know, I mean, there's a reason they've been to 7 straight conference championship games and are trying to three-peat here. I mean, he's just probably the best quarterback we've seen since Brady. But you know, I think this defense can contain him enough. You know, not allow a lot of big plays. I don't think they want to let this game come down to the end, a 1-score game, especially with when you've got a kicker you can't trust anymore. But you know, I just feel a lot more confident about the Eagles' chances of beating them this time than 3 years ago or 3 years ago. Yeah, but and even then, you know, that game came down to the end. So it just, you know, right now they're playing so well, and the difference is that defense is just, you know, there's no. I mean, they've contained great quarterbacks this year. There's nobody that's like torched them. No team with great wide receivers, including the Rams, who have got Cooper Kupp and Nakua. I mean, they handled them well. I mean, they got their catches, but they didn't beat them. And so the Chiefs don't have any great wide receivers. They've got Hollywood Brown. I like the rookie Xavier Worthy, but I mean, I'll put Quinyon Mitchell on anybody and be confident that he can stop them. You know, Travis Kelce's got a lot of catches this year, but he's averaging a career low in yards per catch. He's only got 3 touchdowns. So I mean, if they'll let Mahomes play, 5 yards passes to Kelce and try to stop him that way or hold him to field goals. And as far as one of the big matchups in my mind is going to be Steve Spagnuolo's defense against Jalen and that offense. they're going to blitz him. I mean, I think they had the 5th highest blitz percentage in the league this year. And, but Jalen's been much better against the blitz this year than he was last year. I think they'll probably do a lot of what they did last week against Washington, guys, and get the ball out quickly and rely on Saquon. And I don't see Kansas City being able to shut him down.
Yeah, you went right where I was going to go, Paul. I was thinking Kansas City, to me, this year is better defensively than they are offensively. That
Right.
hasn't been the case in the last few years. But just like at the end of that Buffalo game, all of a sudden Spagnuolo comes up with a corner blitz where that thing come from that makes the play to save the game. Yeah. And you would have never thought that was coming. And that's where Jalen and the audibles and so forth, which he's done a great job with, he's going to have to be on top of his game.
Yeah. I mean, we can't have a 7-sack game like they got away with, in the first playoff game. And that's why I think, I mean, they're going to – Kellen Moore's going to have him ready to get that ball out. And he's going to have – you saw a lot of times on Sunday, I mean, Barkley would just go over to the side. If he wasn't involved, instead of using him as a blocker, he was there if they needed to dump the ball off so that they could avoid the sack. So I think we'll see a lot of that. The other thing we didn't talk about, guys, the turnovers. I mean, they've got a +10 turnover differential. That's unheard of. They haven't turned it over a single time, and they've taken it away 10 times in their 3 playoff games. Now, the Chiefs don't turn it over a lot, but they haven't played this defense. So, it's going to be interesting to see whether they can force a couple turnovers off of, out of Mahomes and the rest of that offense.
And, of course, the Hurts fumble in Super Bowl 57 a couple of years ago, one of the key plays of that game. Yeah. Travis Kelce, you mentioned him. We just saw Zach Ertz, who's, 34, 35 years old now, with 11 catches against the Eagles. Does that portend, Travis Kelce having a big day as well in Super Bowl 59?
It could. He's been – you look at his numbers this year. I mean, he had 97 catches. But they've come in some games he's got like 12 catches, most of them clearly the defense is going to have to decide what to focus on. I don't think they're afraid of Travis Kelce like they were 3 years ago. I think they respect him tremendously. They know that Mahomes is going to look for him, but they're okay with that as long as they don't allow him a lot of yards after the catch. This defense has – I think it gave up 5 touchdowns to tight ends this year, none to running backs. But most of those, a couple of Zach Ertz had one in the first Washington game, in garbage time and things like that. I mean, they have not been – a couple of years back, they couldn't stop a good tight end to save their life. Now I think it's their choice. They'll let tight ends – they'll let anybody catch the ball for 5 yards. They'll try not to give them too many first downs. So, it's going to be an interesting matchup, especially without Nakobe Dean. We'll see a lot of Burks on him, I guess, and a lot of Reed Blankenship. But I like their chances against him as far as him doing any real damage.
Well, and I think another important part of this game for the Eagles is you can't leave it close towards the end. Exactly. Things always seem to go the Chiefs' way for whatever reason. We won't go into all that, but for whatever reason, the ball seems to bounce their way at the end. They need to be able to get enough of a cushion that we're not playing down to the last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I mean, besides the Mahomes factor, Kansas City's won so many of those games, they just believe they can find a way, and they usually do. And again, another concern of mine is we talked about it earlier when I mentioned the kicker. I mean, Jake Elliott's confidence level right now is not great. I'm okay with him out there for a 30-something yard field goal. If they can't push it in the red zone, but I don't want this game to come down to him needing to make a 50-yard field goal because I don't think he can anymore. It's not leg strength. It's just mechanics and confidence. I mean, we saw on that 54-yarder last week, that ball just tailed right from the beginning. I mean, that was not it was never going to, you knew right from the beginning that it wasn't going to go in. And so I thought at one point 6-7 weeks ago that they might think about bringing somebody onto the practice squad, another kicker, and then make a decision at some point. Now it's too late to do that. I mean, it's sink or swim with Jake. So if you're the Eagles, you try to win the game like you did last week. Just pile up the points, have your defense. I think the Eagles can score in the 30s on this Chiefs defense. The question is, what's Kansas City going to put up? So yeah, you don't want it to become a close game, guys.
Hey, Dom, last thing for me, we're pretty much out of time here. A lot of talk on the radio yesterday and today is if Jalen Hurts and the Eagles win this game, and he plays well, is he all of a sudden considered the best quarterback in Eagles history?
Yeah. I mean, taking them to 2 Super Bowls,
Four straight playoff appearances, 2 Super Bowls, 1 Super Bowl win,
quarterbacks are in this league are generally measured by Super Bowl championships. And I don't feel that's often fair because, this is the ultimate team game. But yeah, I have a lot of confidence in this guy. He's not, I think Nick put it after the game on Sunday, I forget his quote. It was like, he was referring to Jalen as much as he was the team. He said, it's not like you envision it to be, meaning, that the offense doesn't run. They're basically a run-oriented offense, but the Jalen doesn't, he's not a guy you look at and say, wow, what a great passer, even though his numbers are terrific. But when you throw in the running game, that's what so many quarterbacks, like CJ Stroud, all these guys, the ability to add running to it is so important when you evaluate them.
Well, Domo, before we let you go, let everyone know where they can find your show, your writings, and everything you got going on.
Yeah, WBCB, Monday nights, 6:00. We do the show from the Great American Pub in Conshohocken. So you can go down there and mingle with our guest. This week, I think it's going to be Sean Landetta, the former Eagle and Philadelphia Star. Everybody's welcome to come on down there, or they can listen to it and on WBCBsports.com anytime they want.
All right. Good deal. Well, Damo, as always, we appreciate you doing this with us, and let's talk again after we're Super Bowl champions.
You bet. Take care, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. Thanks. All right, Chet. Man, what was that, man? That was great stuff, as always, with Damo. Hey, tell us what's going on with the best tailgaters in Philadelphia. Bob Cavanaugh and the gang at Cavs Philly Tailgates. They might have a little conflict, Chet. We got Super Bowl. We got spring training.
Well, Cavs Philly Tailgates has been cooking up a terrific catering business for 30-plus years, known best for their tailgate parties. Cavs is a 3-time winner of Philly Tailgates, Jack Daniels Great American Tailgate Party Contest, and a past winner of the Philly Daily News Tailgate Award. Cavs also does corporate events, parties, you name it. Of course, Cav hosts tailgates before all of the Birds games at the Link. They had a great one last Sunday, and there will be various tailgates outside Citizens Bank Park this spring and summer, too, including ones before the home opener on March 31st. And yeah, they're down there for spring training as well in mid-March. And together with the guys at Philly Sports Trips, Cav is heading to New Orleans late next week for the big game. There are packages that don't include a ticket to the game and packages that do. Get all the details on that at the website, phillysportstrips.com. And for the closer to home tailgates, phillytailgates.com. Cavs Philly Tailgates is the way to go.
Yes, they are. Hey, Chet, obviously we're not going to make our Super Bowl picks tonight, but how did we do on Championship Sunday? I think I was the only one to pick the Bills, wasn't I?
I think you're right about that, Bill. Let me see if I have the updated standings in here. I thought I put them in here, but I don't see them. Yeah, that would be correct. The bad news for you, Bill, you have officially been eliminated from our postseason competition because you can't make up 2 games with just one more to predict. Boop and I are both 9-3 now through the 12 games that have been played in the postseason. You are 7-5. And I'm wondering, with Boop being both an Eagles and a Chiefs fan, and kind of a betting guy as well. I'm wondering who he's going to pick when we have to make our predictions next week between the Chiefs and Eagles.
Going to be fun to hear, and going to be fun to watch. I think it's going to be a really good game.
I do too. I really
do.
Hey,
we had great guests tonight in Amy Fadool and Paul Domowitch. Who's coming to Philly Press Box Radio next week?
Wow. Next week, Bill, in addition to spending, we'll have the show recapping this Sunday's Grammy Awards. Okay, maybe not.
We won't. Believe me. Anybody watching that wants to watch next week, we won't.
All right. We will talk pretty much all football then ahead of Super Bowl 59, and we will do so with a couple pro football experts. We have Bleeding Green Nation's Brandon Lee Gouton joining us live to break down the matchup. BLG's first visit with us since last summer, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah. Plus, making his annual Super Bowl week visit. Yeah, that's right. It's the Hall of Fame coach, Dick Vermeil, who Domo mentioned, and who knows a thing or two about both the Eagles and the Chiefs. Yeah, he coached both of them. And then, well, the real star of next week's show, Bill. Yes, we have a third guest, Bob Vitrone Jr., a.k.a. Boop, joining us live, we hope, to go over some of the wacky bets you can make on the Super Bowl and to tell us whether he is taking the Chiefs or the Eagles. How's that for a show, Bill?
There you go. Hey, smash the like button. I like the way Eric's talking on our.
There you go.
On our Philly Press Box page, our Philly Press Box YouTube, and on our ST as well. Hey, Chet, I have one question for you because we're about out of time. We're running out of time.
Yeah.
So the Eagles are ahead by 7.
Yeah.
No, they're ahead by 8. They're ahead by 8.
8.
They go for 2 to go up 10. That makes it a 2-score game. If you kick a field goal and you go up by 9, that makes it a 2-score game.
So you're wondering why?
Why did we go for 2 and not just kick and go up 9?
I guess because 10 is better than 9 in the sense that if you get 7, the opposing team, then you only need a field goal to tie.
Yeah, Chet, sometimes I think not you, Coach Sirianni's footballs get bigger than his brains.
Yeah,
how'd I do with that?
Yeah, you're right. And sometimes you're right. They chase points too early. I mean, you always want to be up by as many points as possible, but sometimes it doesn't make sense to take that gamble like they did when they moved it, a yard closer, so they could go for 2 instead of just taking the extra point.
Yeah, although it all worked out.
Although extra points have been a bit of a challenge this postseason for Jake Elliott.
Well, it worked out, but I'd have certainly taken that point and gone up 9. That's 2 scores. It's not a whole lot different than 10 at that point. Anything else?
Yeah, I want to mention just one thing about movies. I'm sure you watched my 7.5-minute recap of the year in movies 2024, every minute of it. Yeah, sure you did.
I didn't even know there was a thing.
In case you didn't, I'm not going to play that for you, but here are what I consider the best movies released in 2024. I mentioned to you A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan movie, is fantastic. Timothy Chalamet deserves the Oscar. Give it to him. And I also love this movie, Strange Darling, which nobody saw. It had like $4 million brought in at the box office, but it's a great thriller told in 6 acts. Really, really good. And then I like Conclave, about choosing a new pope, and Nora, fantastic. And September 5, which I mentioned last week to Mike Sealski, I gave those 3 also an A-. And then there were a whole bunch of other ones that I like and some honorable mentions. Bill, believe it or not, I saw 71 movies released in the theater last year, 53 in the theater, 18 on streaming or cable. Perhaps I have too much free time. I don't know.
You do. And just look at all the money you gave away for that. Jeez.
Well deserved. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every minute. Well, not every minute of it, but most of those minutes.
Yeah,
Wrap it up.
Hey, let's move on.
Wrap it up.
All right. Let's thank tonight's special guests, Amy Fadool and Paul Domowitch. Our sponsors, the Irish Rover Station House, Cavs Philly Tailgates, PPCC 118 Raz Room. For Jim Chetchesko, this is Bill Furman. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll join Philly Press Box Radio next Wednesday, February the 5th at 7 p.m. You can see us live on Facebook, on our Philly Press Box Radio YouTube channel, and on the STT Sports Network YouTube channel as well. Listen on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and all the others. High hopes, Philadelphia sports fans. We're going to the Super Bowl. Let's go, Birds.
Let's do the song. Come on.